It's 5 o'clock. We're going to call this to order. This is an emergency executive council meeting of the Old Colony Planning Council called at 5 o'clock on February 12th, 2025. We really just have one item for discussion. There is a case involving,
Madam President, just in terms of.
sorry.
That's okay.
Accessibility. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833. The Notice of Non-Discrimination Rights and Protections to Beneficiaries with regard to federal Title VI non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is posted in this meeting room and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website. Please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 for more information. Thank you. Okay. And with that start, Mary, you want to do a quick roll call that we have a quorum of the executive committee?
Correct. President Becky Coletta.
Here.
Treasurer Christine Joy.
Here.
Vice President Noreen O'Toole.
Here.
Lee Hartman.
Present.
Stephen Santasonio.
Present.
And I am just making
For
sure I'm
the
not missing anybody
record,
else. Yep.
I'm just going to note who else is in the room. We have John Costa, alternate in the room, Brenda Robinson, Charles Kilmer, and Megan Forney and Mary Waldron from OCPC.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we called this meeting. Mary probably had the authority as our executive director. Other regional planning agencies have found that their executive director could sign on to this amicus brief in the interest of sort of keeping these organizations running and functioning. But we thought it was better given the way that we tend to run the council, which is to be very open and transparent and to make sure that the council is always sort of taking the lead on policy decisions, that we call a meeting to talk about this amicus brief. With that, I think it might be helpful to have Mary give a little bit of a background on what MARPA is saying, what the attorney for MARPA is saying, and you know, what the other regional planning organizations are doing, as well as the current status of our funding.
Great, thank you. I will first start with in not only the executive committee, but in the information that I shared with the rest of the council is an email chain of the discussion. So it really just came up yesterday morning, early in the morning. And while there were some other things we were dealing with on the federal funding, I had not taken action at it as of yet. And it came from Mark Drayson and had conversations with the two chairs of the Mass Association of Regional Planning Agencies, both Jeff and Linda, and they agreed that it was something that there was two choices in terms of and you know the amicus brief in terms of protecting the funding that we have coming to us from the federal government, and from the perspective that we had. You know, emails were coming fast and furious, including people were responding, other regional planning agencies. So there's 13 of us. There are 9 who have signed on to have Mass Association Regional Planning sign on, and 9 who are also individual regional planning agencies signing on. We have not done so because I knew that we were going to be scheduling this meeting, but Cape Cod Commission and Merrimack Valley both had said they were going to be fine. They had voted to just approve to have have Mass Association Regional Planning Agencies sign on. And from the perspective of why my recommendation to the executive committee is that we sign on to both, is that in fact, you know, with close to 70% of our funding coming from the federal government, to protect those funds, as I said, at our finance meeting and our council meeting, it kind of changes from day to day, just in terms of there are some agencies that are freely engaged with releasing funds to us. And in specifically, we've had a couple that have not. And it has in fact put a stop to, I've made that decision that before we expend funds that we don't know if we're going to recoup, we just need to suspend any kind of action at that point until we hear more. Again, this is week number 2.5, almost 3. And when this action had come through, it does, in fact, relate to the fact that protecting those contracts that were fully and rightfully executed. So that is the part that I am, again, protecting what we have in place. We are doing things like activating and looking for ways to activate our 501c3 to utilize that to look for additional funding and seek other funding to continue our good work. And also working with our federal and state partners as well. So that is the status of where we are.
Carrie, I just want to clarify one thing. My understanding is that one of the agencies that is still freezing funding is the EDA.
That is
So
correct.
our EDA money for example, the regional water project that we're sort of getting towards the end of, but we still have money that needs to come in to finish that project,
That
is
correct.
currently being held up. So I feel like this amicus brief is not merely theoretical, and it's not also talking about future budgets and whether or not we should or shouldn't get these kind of grants in the future. This is
Right.
talking about grants that have already been executed, for
Correct.
which work has already been done, but we can't finish the projects without
And
this funding being released.
And if I just can further clarify that, you are absolutely correct in terms of the EDA funding. On top of that, Nick Giaquinto's salary is out of the EDA funding as well, which is holding up. And there's at least 4 or 5 different projects, including funding for the town of Avon and working with their industrial park, working with, Lee's on here in terms of Plymouth. Stoughton has some projects that we have been going. I mean, the whole, again, it varies. On the other hand, I want to say is like EPA has released some of the funding. But again, it varies upon departments, and for us to kind of, I will tell you, it is exhausting because we really are we are making every effort to stay above the fold and to continue the work that we're doing. And there are times that it's difficult. I happened to be on a phone call with Pat Giamella about 45 minutes ago. And I said, I compared this to actually being in COVID, the stress and the trying to be resilient, if we will, in terms of keeping the work that we're doing afloat. But again, hence the action of taking a stand and knowing that how it affects us as regional planning agencies.
And I also would just say, so right now, the status of the case, as I understand it, is that there was a temporary restraining order put in place that said funds should not be frozen. Right now, that's not having a huge impact. Some agencies are listening to it, others aren't. The amicus brief. So when you go in and file for a temporary restraining order, if people do or don't know, it's done on very limited briefing, right? Someone goes in, files a complaint, and does basic briefing around likelihood of success on the merits and irreparable harm if the status quo isn't maintained. So the temporary restraining order is essentially to restrain action and keep the status quo in place until a full briefing can happen and a court can fully adjudicate an issue, it can go up on appeal, all of those other things can happen. So the amicus brief is at the next stage where they start to have fuller briefings of the issues involved. So the government, as well as interested parties, amicus is a friend of the court brief. We're saying that we are people who would be affected by this decision. Directly affected by this decision. So that's the request. And with that sort of background, I think I would open it up to any questions or comments.
I think we lost you, Becky. Did we lose Becky's voice?
Oh, no, I just muted myself once I said, open it
Okay.
up for questions or comments, because If I don't keep muting myself, my dogs will bark. Anybody?
Becky,
Barry?
it's Christine. I've got a question for you. So I just want to make sure that us signing on to this is not going to jeopardize any future federal grants, any money that we may be eligible for by participating in this.
I guess that's kind of an unanswerable question in the sense that the criteria for future grants is under review right now. I think a lot of what we do, to the extent any of it touches on resiliency, coastal resiliency, could be an issue. I think that there's sort of strength in numbers. So if all of the regional planning agencies here, and if a group of agencies around the country are signing on to this brief, the brief is actually done by the center out of New York.
Correct.
And so it's working with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. That is an organization representing more than 1,400 U.S. cities. And they're sort of taking the lead on this. And then you have regional planning councils from throughout the U.S. I mean, the reality is that we're in Massachusetts. And so I think we'll get treated, how we're going to get treated based on that more than anything.
But I think Christine's
but it's-
question is a legitimate question, right? I think that's what we're all kind of concerned about. I stand on the work that the staff does as professionals. I'm not an attorney, and I was glad to at least talk through some of this with Becky because she was able to help walk me through this as well. It is strength in numbers, and it's not just Massachusetts, it's across the country. You know, there are some folks and, you know, again, we have some discussions with our federal partners in terms of Senator Markey's office and Senator Warren's office, but as well as Congressman Lynch and Congressman Keating's office. At every aspect, you know, we contact them. So again, let me talk a little bit just quickly, just today, because it happened today. So Don Sullivan had a conversation with our local representative, just to kind of see if there's indication. We're continuing work as we are, and we are submitting our bills where we can, and we know that we're not going to like put us in, say, it was at the finance or the council meeting, I think, when I showed that, you know, what we have in our free cash. The expectancy would be if, in fact, all of our funds get shut off, which we don't think that's happening as of right now. That's not happening. It would take us through like 3.5 months for payroll. If something's going to happen, it would have happened, I think, already. But I think it's cautious, and I still would recommend the fact that strength in numbers that we sign on, as I think these are uncharted territories, and these are just times that we just don't know what else is happening. And if we can't stand up for the work that we're doing, then I'm not quite sure what we then stand for, right? But I think those questions, to be cautious and to know and to have that discussion about what could be a relative reaction, would be at least smart to ask. I know we do I know we're doing great work, and the work we're doing is contractual. And we know that it's having an impact on our community and on our region.
I just like to dovetail on the strength in numbers. I think being part of a group, that all has, main concerns. They have concerns. We have concerns. Sometimes they're like needs, but sometimes they're not. And it's good to see what else is going on out there. And I just think it'd be such a great learning process for us as an RPA to find out, what's happening with the other RPAs, and, what are the best methods for problem solving. If we run into a situation, there's a lot of people that we can draw that information from.
So Noreen,
And
to that, there's a group of people that are down. There's about 5 or 6 regional planning agencies that are in DC right now. I
Right.
did not think that was a good use of funding
Absolutely.
us. But they're there right now for that very purpose, to be talking to each other and to be talking to the congressional delegation. So,
But those are the bigger ones.
Yeah.
And we can sort of learn from them, like Noreen
Right.
is saying.
Yeah,
But I think the other thing is that, like what we're asking for here is just to honor the agreements that exist, right?
right, right.
And so I don't think we're going out on a limb and asking for anything outrageous.
No.
And I also think that if we need to backfill some of the money, we're going to also be looking at our state. And, Speaker Mariano has said we can't fill the gap of all the federal money, but, we're going to try to fill some of it. So there's also strength in numbers within the state of being aligned with MAPC, who clearly has a lot more votes under its belt than we do,
Right,
in terms of legislators and the like.
right,
That I think there's a strength there, and being part of a coalition that says, this is work that has to happen. We need to be
right.
planful. We need to organize around these things. And if we do lose any federal money along the way, we're going to be going back and asking the state
Right.
to help fill the gap for the RPAs.
So are we, Becky, making a motion to approve Mary to sign for us?
Well, I think the motion would, if people want to do it, the motion would be to agree as on behalf of Old Colony Planning Council that we can sign on to the amicus brief, both
Yes,
as Old Colony Planning Council and as voting in favor of MARPA signing on as a umbrella organization.
well, I'd like to put that motion on the floor.
Lee Hartman, I'll second.
Okay. But what Christine is talking about is what everyone's trying to figure out right now, right? What's going to put you in a better position
Right,
3 months from now? And because it's not rule-based, I don't know that there's a good answer,
right.
right?
Hmm.
yes.
Sandy has her hand up.
Oh, I can't see that, but go ahead, Sandy.
Sorry, yes. Well, I'm kind of in the middle with both, with all of this that is happening going on. I'm just wondering, like, is this going to tie us up for a very long time? And what is the money that's involved in it? I mean, can we risk even putting the money in to sign in? Because the state may do something entirely different and we may not have to get involved where maybe other states might have to. I'm just thinking that, this may tie us up longer than what we anticipate.
So as I understand it, we're only being asked to file an amicus brief, which is different from joining in the action.
Right.
So
Mhm.
an amicus brief is a friend of the court brief. It's designed to give the court more information to consider, but we're not taking on the obligation of litigating the case. So that will be up to the attorney generals who are taking the lead on litigating the actual case. And Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we're being asked to put up any money for the brief itself.
There is
That
no
someone
money.
else is either
No
funding it or it's being done pro bono.
That is
Right.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to Sandy's point, in terms of her question, monies, right? So we have about $128,000 left on the regional water study. I know the various amounts of, the Nick's position, that's 70,000, but that's matched by some DLTA, some state funding. We, again, this goes back to that, the different agencies are handling things differently. So, we just received a $1.9 million grant. It's a federal transportation. But from what all I see is that there seems to be progressing with caution, but they seem to be wanting, we have a meeting coming up, so we'll be discussing that. So we're finding things out along the way, and we're continuing, like I said, we're continuing the work that we're doing. We're not stopping, because again, it's as long as we have that income and we have those funds coming in, it's just cautionary that we've had to this point, specifically as it relates to EDA. FEMA's not, right? FEMA's a whole nother another story. So,
Do we have a
again,
FEMA grant?
no, 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 we
Oh.
do not. But I think where I was getting to this is that, there are some funds in terms of hazard mitigation or municipal vulnerability, but we do not have a FEMA grant. Absolutely not.
Okay, all right. And Lee, is the Plymouth EDA grant on hold right now, or is that?
No,
No?
I'm petrified. My hair's getting whiter and whiter every day. So far, all the direction we have is to continue on, so. Nobody's told us to stop, and nobody's saying, we were just talking, I've talked several times today to Don and to Mary, and they, again, the indication they're having is that it's still honoring these things, so yeah,
Okay,
until somebody tells me from the EDA I need to stop, I'll stop, but haven't heard that yet.
okay,
But I am losing sleep over it.
right,
and me
because we
both.
don't have the money in the door.
And if I may, that's where I feel like the state is going to back us. I don't think that they're going to not fund us right away. I think that, myself, I think that we should, just keep on going the way we are going. Getting into something or joining something else, we don't know what the other states are looking at and what their criteria is. It makes me nervous. And I know Becky explained it very well, but I think we should just keep going and not necessarily get into anything because we don't know what's going to tie us up. And, we say it's not going to tie us up, but it could.
Just to be clear, Speaker Mariano was pretty clear that they're gonna help, but they're not gonna, I mean, this is a lot of federal money. This is not, if the feds didn't fund some of these programs, like I don't know that the state would consider, like Lee's issue in Plymouth, I don't know that the state would prioritize funding a study of how to redevelop that property in Plymouth as a priority for the state. I mean, some of these grants are things that we really did a lot of work to get, based upon, very specific grant applications. So I'm not sure that they're the sort of thing that the state would step in and fund directly.
And I'm okay
but-
with it being for what out to date. It's if they say we're not gonna honor for the commitment you made. So that's the only thing I'm worried about. If they tell me to stop the project, I'll stop the project. That's not the end of the world. It's me going to town meeting asking for $300,000 because
We already spent it.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm kind of unsettled is if the state isn't going to go ahead and fund us, even through the federal government, what else is there to do? I mean,
Well, so right now, so this case is, we still have a system of checks and balances, right? If the
Yeah.
case says that cutting off funding for these entire categories of funding that was congressionally authorized is not constitutionally permitted, then that would go up to the Supreme Court. So when you say what else can we do? I mean, part of it is to let the rule of law play itself out, right? And to let our voice be part of saying this is going too far, right? This is taking away vital governmental functions that we think we're performing, and that we want the court to understand that these are committed projects based upon congressional action. By the way, I do want to just note for the record that Allison Shane from Duxbury and Mike Perez from West Bridgewater are on the line, and Sandra Wright is obviously on the line because we're talking to you, but we didn't note that for the record at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh.
So I guess I feel like it's about just participating in what Steve, do you want to, Stephen, do you want to just give us an idea of what your thought is before you have to drop off?
I got a couple minutes, but I'd say sign on. It sounds like that's what, everybody's leaning towards. And I mean, I don't know if there's a pro or con. You know, seems like the pros are to sign on, but that's what I'm
So we have-
hearing, so,
We have a motion and it was seconded, and maybe
Yeah.
in the interest of time, we should just move ahead with the vote. We can
Yeah.
continue to talk after, but I lose Steve. Let's.
yeah.
All right,
please suggest,
let's,
I got till 5:30, so,
okay, so let's see if we go ahead and take a vote, and
Mm.
we can always vote to reconsider
Mm.
if we need to, but
Mm.
I don't want to lose our, we have full participation right now, so. Mary, can you
Yes.
do a roll call on that motion?
Becky Coletta,
Yes.
Christine Joy,
Can I ask a question before I vote? So is this the FY 26 funds? Or is this FY 26 and FY 27?
No, these are FY 25 funds.
correct.
So these are FY 25. Okay. All right. I support the motion.
Noreen O'Toole? Oh, okay, that you're muted, but can you unmute yourself? Sorry.
Accept the motion.
Thank you. Lee Hartman,
accept.
Stephen Santasonio,
I accept.
Sandra Wright.
Except,
And those are the members of the executive committee. And as you mentioned, Madam President, is that Michael Perez and Allison Shane are on also as, and John Costa listening in, so
As delegates.
as del-
So, I mean, if, do we want to find out more, do people want to find out more information since we have Mary and Charlie and Brenda on the phone? Are there other questions you have about our cash flow, our funding? You know, this is an opportunity to ask those questions as well. If we have any of those. I mean, it sounds like we have enough to get us through 3 or 4 months of funds being frozen, and covering any obligations we incur. And the hope is that something gets resolved so that we know whether to continue projects or not if the funding continues to get held up.
Right.
Megan's just going to take down the agenda just because that way the conversation can continue. So there we go. Thank you, Megan.
could I say one more thing?
Sure.
The question, well, not really a question. My thoughts are, the state already funded all of these programs for the 2025 budget. So I would assume, and I hate to assume anything because you know exactly what that means, but I think, you know, the state is there, has it funded, and as long as, you know, there isn't any discrepancies in the funding, I think you're going to get your money and the state is going to cover it.
But it's
I-
not
you
the
know,
state, it's the
Yeah.
federal government.
We get
That's
the
correct.
money directly from the feds without it going through the state, right?
Right, but
Yeah, the state has nothing to do with this. But you know, Sandy, I would disagree because even at the state level, I've had several signed contracts over the years that the state has pulled back. I've actually had them claw back money they've actually given to me on grants. So, you know, Little Plymouth is not going to argue legality of a signed contract with the Commonwealth and jeopardize in the future, but they have canceled 3 or 4 contracts that I can think of that were signed and executed. And then in one case last year, they had we had an earmark, and not only did we have the earmark cut in half, some of the money voted to us they asked to have returned. So there's even at the state level, there's no guarantee even with a signed contract.
yeah, I agree with you in many ways there, but I still think that even though it is federal money, I still think that they had it in their budget for 2025. And I think that's why, you know, if we keep on going forward, we're going to get paid.
Wait a
Until
minute, who had it
until-
in their budget, Sandy?
I'm sorry?
When you say they had it in the budget for 2025, who had it in the budget?
The
Well,
federal government, this is
the
all
federal-
budgeted.
Right,
So
the
these
federal government,
contracts these contracts are all signed and budgeted by the EDA. So they're in their current budget. So the
Right.
issue is whether or not
right,
the administration is going to pull money out of this year's budget. Versus normally you would expect they'd do it moving forward, but they might be looking at everything that's been issued for this year and trying to pull it back.
Well, that seems to be what
Right.
what
Let-
they're
let-
doing if they're freezing the money going
At
out the
this
door.
point, they're not looking to pull it back. They just want to get rid of the inclusionary language.
That
Yeah.
actually was about what I was ready to say, and that's what we heard when Charlie and I attended a meeting out in Worcester with Mass DOT, and the Federal Highway was there. Didn't get deeply into it other than they're saying for us to proceed. That's that's transportation dollars. Again, what we're hearing is, DEI and climate change is being scrubbed, being cleansed from language, then the contract goes back, but it's taking some time, and some organizations, some agencies are quickly doing that, and then some are not, and they're holding back, and EDA is tending to be one. But the language we heard, again, it's not directly from anyone directly further up the top. It's just saying that seems to be the next step. We just don't know when it's happening. And in the meantime, we as an organization, we're functioning full speed ahead. And we just want to make sure we're not spending dollars that we may not see. And how do we make, what kind of gap funding? And as Brenda talked about, there was about $800,000 in total of the 4 different bank accounts, 4 or 5 different bank accounts in free cash. But that's not how we function, right? That's not how we want to function, is spending all our free cash and then
No,
going.
no.
So my recommendation would be this, because I know that a couple of you have a 6 o'clock meeting.
Oh, yeah, we do.
But this will be on the agenda for the finance meeting. We can certainly put this on for the full council meeting. It definitely has lots of conversations, both internally to the office, but as well as council members. And I think I would just say to Becky as the president and to all of you is that having it come to the council and being transparent is the way that is the right way to do this, right? It's not to be, could I have done it? I certainly have the authority, but why would I do that? This is important to have the conversation so we can all be on the same page and continue to be successful with the work we do.
Mary, let me just jump in. Do we need to vote on anything else before I drop?
No,
No,
that was
we're
it.
good.
Okay. all
Thank
right,
you,
so I need to
Stephen,
Thank
very
you,
run.
much.
Stephen.
Thank you, Steve.
everyone.
Have a
Thanks,
good
Steve.
night.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so I guess, we'll know more by next week. Is it next week or the week after that we have council meeting?
We have it on the week after, not next week.
Okay.
The 25th is the finance and 26th is full council.
So hopefully by then we'll have gotten more of the money will be opening up as they work through this process. And we can all breathe a little more easily.
Until next year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
right.
still
Well,
not sleeping well at night, but that's okay. That I'd rather it be me than having to have somebody else. But again, it's great conversation. Really trying not to, and staff knows is not alarming. It just, I think when this case comes forward, being strength in numbers again, having a voice and not just saying, okay, we're going to take it on the chin and figure it out. So
Move to adjourn.
Okay, second,
Okay,
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
bye.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
next
thank
week.
you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.